Welcome to another episode of Tough Men of Faith.
What's up, RT? How you doing?
I'm tired.
Tired?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because while you were sitting in here in your comfortable chair talking to our guest, producer Blake sends a message to us, or calls me. It's like, hey, my car broke down. That's the bad news. The good news is I'm right here where we're at. So I go out there.
Yeah.
I thought he meant he's in the parking lot.
Right.
So I go out there and I had to help push his car.
Was he just like steering it and having you push?
No, he was actually doing it himself.
Oh,
so,
okay.
But I was just wondering where you were at. So
I didn't realize it was like actually broke down. I thought it was, maybe you had a low tire, like a tire light on or something.
No.
You know.
It's broke down. So he's going to need one of us to pull it home probably.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah, you ride with him in the car and steer it and brake it, and I'll pull you guys.
Yeah, it'll be
easy.
entertaining.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into it. So tonight we're joined by a guest that we've been wanting to have for a while.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for quite a while.
Yeah. So welcome, Howard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Howard with
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be here.
Yeah. So I've known you a couple of years now. The first time we met, someone told me, he's like, hey, you should meet. I want you to meet Howard. And so someone I didn't know that well. And I think we got coffee over to Panera on the east side of Indy.
Yep, sure did.
Sit down and loved hearing your story then. And you came and spoke at a men's camp out we had for our church.
Yes.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, Nick was there. Producer Blake was there. And
food was good.
Yeah. Our guys really enjoyed just kind of hearing your story and what God's been doing over, I don't know, 60, are you 60?
67.
67
years
wow. In your life.
Where'd it go?
Yeah, it goes fast, doesn't it?
You have no idea.
That's what I that's what I tell people younger than me. Is like, you have no idea how fast life goes.
Yeah.
Yes, we thought we would just start with maybe telling us where you grew up. It's like, where'd you grow up and how'd that get you to where you're at now?
Yeah, I grew up right here in Indianapolis, born and raised on the west side of Indianapolis, Riverside area. Was born in 1955, so grew up in a real tough time here in America, in the inner city of Indianapolis. Went to...
It was a weird time of change, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was. Surroundings... Well, to back up, my grandparents, my grandfather moved to Indianapolis from Tennessee.
Okay.
From what I understand, he moved here to escape being lynched, down in the country of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And he came up and brought his family. I think at the time he may have had 4 children, and the rest were born here, wound up with 13.
Wow.
My dad being one of them. And so we grew up. I grew up there, the only child of my mom and dad. So I grew up as an only child as well. Just situated there and went to grade school and went to Crispus Attucks High School, which, back in that day, especially when my grandfather and my dad and his siblings came up, that was the only school that African Americans could go to.
Really?
Back in the 40s and 50s, yeah.
So in the 60s. Indianapolis public school system, that's where if you're an African American, you went to Crispus Attucks.
Yes, that was it. For a long time, And actually, I graduated with the last all-black class of Crispus Attucks in 1973.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Was it integrated classes or was it just all black?
I think it was Mayor Lugar. Integrated it up to the junior year. Okay. And I was a senior that year.
Gotcha.
So that was the last all-black class.
Yeah. I was at that school the other day for a game, and they had this, their history, out there on the wall. It was interesting to see, what all happened and this kind of history of that school.
My picture should be on that wall.
Yeah.
From what I hear.
Well,
our classes
when I go back, I'll look for you.
Yeah.
But you have a little bit less grade then, right?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you graduated high school in 73?
Yes. And, I went to the Navy after that. In my family, education was not something, that was, talked about. And so, a lot of my relatives, we either you get a good, try to get a job. Yeah. But actually, a lot of my family didn't finish high school. My dad and his siblings never got a high school diploma. Yeah. So my generation was the first to really get there, to get the high school diploma. And college was not something that was talked about. Yeah. Nobody really, tried to get us to go to college. And so military was it, because I didn't want to hang around and just do nothing with my life like a lot of my friends and others were doing. I really had a a music background. I played saxophone,
Okay.
all during high school, and played in some local bands and stuff. And my goal was to be a jazz musician, but, started, just really getting high, drinking at a very young age, drinking, hanging in the streets, and just grew up in that, having a lot of the adults present that before me and groom me into that, So by the time I graduated from high school, I was getting high every day, with marijuana and different, experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Really started young and probably 10 or 11 years old, started drinking and, sexually active, just doing all the stuff that I saw presented and was lived out before me.
All the things of the world.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And, and funny to say that. And that was the issue because Jesus Christ or the things of God was nowhere in my family history, that I knew of, not in that, from my grandfather that came up from Tennessee. And, my dad had 9 brothers and 3 sisters and it just wasn't there.
Yeah.
We were not a religious family.
It's crazy when you think about it, that if you're not raised in it, and it's not,
Yeah.
if it's not in your family, it's not something that you're surrounded by. It's kind of puts the emphasis back on guys. How we have that responsibility
Absolutely.
to lead our families and to lead our our wives and our kids.
Yeah.
Because without us, it's really easy to go wayward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were really good people. They would,
Yeah.
As they say, give you the shirt off their backs,
Right.
and they will help you out. But just knowing how to really live life and what it's all about, especially as men. The men in my family, even though they were in the secular realm, good men, they worked, but they just couldn't hold a family together, didn't know how to raise their children in the admonition of the Lord, of course, because he wasn't there. So, so the majority of us, that's how we lived.
Right.
A lot of pregnancies early in life. I had cousins that, would get pregnant at 13 and then they were a mother at 13, a grandmother at 26, a great grandmother, in their late 30s, early 40s, so that was that generational issue there.
Yeah.
So I went to the Navy at 18 and in my neighborhood, growing up in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s was tough because you had the racial divide going on. And in my neighborhood, you had a choice of either you were following Martin Luther King and the nonviolent movement, or you were following the Black Panther Islam, radical Islam, Black Islam, which is different, Farrakhan, Elijah Muhammad, and those guys. So you had a choice to make. Who were you going to follow? And that was a big deal, back then, because you had the riots going on and just all that racial stuff that was going on in the 60s, with Martin Luther King being assassinated and JFK being assassinated and just all the stuff that was going on. So personally, even though my dad told me that the hatred was wrong, he wasn't saying, but he just knew. And he said, that all white people aren't bad. He said that, he told me that. But for me and my boys and what I was growing up with and how we were and my posse, we were militants. I was a self-proclaimed Black militant, Black Panther. And that's what, what drove me. And because it was just wrong from what I see. When you see on TV the fire hoses and the dogs being sicked on people and all that stuff, and knowing now how the news, they show
things.
all that stuff and how they blow it up, and even though some of it was true, but still not knowing the heart of it all, So that's the path that I took, and my heroes, I was radicalized, just like you see today. Men and women that are radicalized in Islam and in different religions, that's where I was. And to the point of in joining the military, I signed up to learn about how to make bombs, because I wanted to help the movement that I was a part of.
So this is still pre-Navy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I got all that, but when it came time to join the Navy, that's the job I chose to go, because that was my thought pattern, was to learn how to make bombs so I could help the movement out.
Gotcha.
You know, in the Navy, the military would teach me how to make bombs, and I would get out and come and,
get back into the movement.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah, because we were going to, we were overthrowing the government. We was taking over. We was doing all that stuff, all the lies that, we were led to believe, But God, even though I wasn't giving him any of my attention, I was totally out there. I was radicalized and in the ideology of the Black Power movement of the day. God changed my heart while I was in there, because it was the first time at 18. It was the first time in my life that I met people outside of my culture.
Right.
Right next to them, I'm living next to them. I'm sleeping. I'm eating with them.
Yeah.
With people different than me,
right.
and
people
so
think different than you.
yeah,
and act different than you.
And so I learned and realized that what my dad had told me was true. And that's where it really started changing. And also when I got in there, and after boot camp, that's when you go to your school to learn what you signed up for.
Yeah.
All that had been changed. All that had been changed.
All of a sudden you didn't want to learn to make bombs
from being
anymore.
an aviation ordnance man to learning about being communications and they call it a radioman, but so I hadn't been in any trouble, and so I had a top secret clearance through the government, and so I went to Morse code school and learned all the electronics for a ship, for the warship, and put in for my first ship was out of Pearl Harbor. I wanted to do some traveling, so I said, let's go to Pearl Harbor, and went there and got to Pearl Harbor, and my ship went on a Westpac cruise. So I'm in an area where there was hardly any African Americans in the unit that I was in.
Okay.
In that job area, and so I had to.
Now you're surrounded by white people.
Yeah, I had to live life that way.
Right. Yeah.
And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Besides my first day on the ship, got off, flew out. First day, walked on the ship. And I was called the N-word, not realizing that the Navy had, especially in that day, had the reputation of being one of the most prejudiced of the armed forces, branches of the armed forces. Yeah, it was bad. But, overall, and, he got in a lot of trouble for that. He got, captain's mass or whatever it was for it, and so life went on from there, and my ship went on a Westpac cruise, Western Pacific cruise, and we were escorting. I was on a destroyer escort, and so we escorted the Enterprise, 5,000 men on it, and just that naval group. And so we, while we were over there, Vietnam fired up again. That was in 1975.
Okay.
And so they sent us to Vietnam, sent us to Saigon for the evacuation of Vietnam. And that's when it really came alive again, is that, we're in the trenches. I'm in the trenches with other men. I mean, not only white, but from all over. I mean, they were, Asian and just different men from all creeds and backgrounds and religions and all that. And it started, just really working on my heart, of course, because there were times I'd be out, and I'm still, still getting high, still, drinking, still living the life of a sailor.
Yeah.
That was one thing that drew me too, because the motto then was sailors have more fun. And they show a sailor, with all the pretty girls and, all that.
And the dress whites and.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That drew them,
right.
So, that drew them. So, I wanted to be a part of that. Either Navy or Marines, that drew them. So we're over there and we're doing our thing, and we could go out on the ship, and and sneak and, and smoke and stuff. And what happened was, as I was doing that, pitch black at night, if you're ever out at sea, been out at sea, at night, you see nothing except for the stars. And so we're out there getting high, and I'm looking into the sky, and it's like, there has to be a God. I mean, you hear a little bit about God, and going back to my mother was raised in a Christian family. Her dad was a Christian, a deacon, and so when my mom, got old enough, she left. She was from Tennessee as well.
Okay.
So she came and she met my dad and married, but my dad not knowing how to treat a woman. They divorced when I was 9. And, I just seeing a lot of stuff there with, fighting, seeing my dad abuse my mom and put her out of the house, and divorced, and he got custody of me. And that's how a lot of that came to be, because I grew up in a single parent home with a dad who was a working alcoholic, and there wasn't a lot of discipline there for me, and just a lot of dysfunction, very dysfunctional upbringing. And so my mom would witness to me. She fell away from the Lord, but after all of that, she, rededicated her life to the Lord, and she would witness to me, and, I would hear it, but, I wasn't interested. So when I would come home on leave, I would go see my mom and things. So, but, as I'm looking into the sky and I'm seeing all this beautiful stuff and seeing things flash across the sky, and I'm like, what is it really all about?
Yeah.
And being in Southeast Asia, got a hold to Scientology, just reading and searching, just searching for some truth there, and never got it, while I was in the Navy, ran into Buddhism and just all the cults and all the, stuff that's being taught in that part of the world. So my time after we left Vietnam, I had PTSD and came back to the States, and that of course didn't go well, and eventually got out of the Navy. I went AWOL while I was in there trying to get out, again having PTSD and just wanting to find out who I was, and just really struggled with that, with drug abuse and just going through, and got out of the Navy, and hung out in Compton, had some family in Compton, and started doing drugs there, and just really started sinking deeper and deeper into it. Came home in 1977, and just started getting deeper, started selling drugs, and got into a drug gang out of Gary, and while my mom is still witnessing to me and just going through, got married. That, of course, that didn't work. So I'm living that life, just continuing the dysfunction. Had a son out of there, out of that marriage, and what God did, and I know it's because of my mother and others praying for me. Got a job at VA Medical Center, so I had a decent job, working alcoholic, just like my dad. No matter, and that's what I was taught. No matter how much I drank or smoked or whatever I did, I still got up and went to work that next morning, no matter what. Hungover, if I stayed up 3 days doing acid or some chemical or whatever, get up and go to work. And I did that.
Yeah.
And so one fateful day, and that would have been September of 1984.
That's a good year.
Yes, it was.
Is that year you're born?
Yes, you're.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah. Of 1984, I had my son, and I was going to my supplier's house to pick up some drugs to put out on the street, and we were tested. It was a chemical, kind of like meth. We called it crystal tea, and I was there to, we was partying and getting my package so I could take care of it and get it out on the street. And we would sample it, and I sampled too much. And on the dry, so all I remember is, I remember the sun setting. It was in the Speedway, town of Speedway. I remember the sun by the Speedway track, 500 track, and I remember the sun setting. And the next thing, and I had my son. It was my weekend to have him, because his mom and I were divorced. And I had a 4-wheel drive pickup because, like I said, with a job and selling, and I was living good. I had bought a house at 25, and so I had my own. I was doing very well according to those standards, And so, I saw this. I remember the sun going down, and the next, so it would have been about 6 o'clock in the evening. The next thing I remember, it was 3 o'clock a.m. the next day. And to this day, I have no recollection of what happened. But when I came to, my son was in the seat next to me in the truck. The front of the truck was wrecked. I was in the parking lot of a shopping center. There's shopping center, which was like 4 blocks from my house. So obviously, in my mind, I was trying to get home. But I found out later that I did stop by some relatives' house, that, I used to go by and grew up, had cousins there that we would get high and all that. So and they said they knew I was acting kind of weird, but they didn't keep me there. They let me go. And so, so when I came to, I saw my son and it was cold and I just picked him up and I walked those 3 to 4 blocks to my house and, his mom later in a couple hours she came because she said they were trying to find me and they didn't know, but I'm in this parking lot, not knowing how. To this day, man, I'm telling you, I don't know how long I'd been there, how I got there, what I hit. None of that is still a mystery. And that was 1984. And so, of course, she comes and she's mad and she said, "You'll never see him again." And just, my life was just falling apart. And right then, the teachings and what all the things that my mom was saying to me, because she would tell me stuff like, you could die in this truck and, you need to give your life. She would witness to me. Yeah. And right then, I just got on my knees and I said, "God, if you're real, and not that you have to prove anything to me, but if you're real, I want to know. Yeah. If you just show me that you're real, I'll serve you the rest of my life."
All right, Howard, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you there. Okay. Blake looks like he's about to throw something at me, and I have a couple hammers in that closet. So I think that's just a great place to stop it for this week. Yeah. And it's been really good. And so next week, just kind of, I started with the question, where did you grow up and how did you get to where you're at now? So we're getting closer to where you're at now. So next week, kind of finish up to where you're at now, and then some words of advice you have for guys and things you've learned. So absolutely. Yeah, so thanks for joining us, and I know you guys will want to make sure you tune in to the next episode.
Yep, we'll see you next week.
Bye.